watching Roll Tide Daily, the new daily program for Crimson Tide fans, presented by SEC Country. Now, here's your host, former Alabama All-American, Mike Johnson.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Roll Tide Daily. My name is Mike Johnson. Hope everybody out there had a great weekend over the last few days. Haven't seen you guys since Thursday, so we're going to jump back into a lot of the goings on from Alabama over the last few days, and hopefully we've got a ton of good topics here coming up. I'm going to list my 5 reasons why Bama could have hiccups coming up in the 2018 season. That's because of Stewart Mandel over the Athletic. We're going to talk about some ESPYs nominees. Bama obviously getting a little bit snubbed in a ton of these categories. I can't believe some of the names that have come out under some of these nominations from around the sporting world that get ESPYs ahead of Alabama football. It's kind of mind-boggling. We're also going to go into a little bit of the Champions Cookout that happened this past weekend. Bama had a ton of huge recruits. I think 5 5-star recruits from the 2018-2019 cycle that were on campus this past weekend. Also got a little bit of a video later on Collin Sexton getting drafted this past Thursday, this past Friday in the first round up to Cleveland Cavaliers. A little bit of a shout out to Collin Sexton, the outfit he had on. You guys are going to love seeing this. Before we dive into topic number one, now topic number one is about theathletic.com, Stewart Mandel, and his mailbag, right? He was asked the question, how does Bama come back from the loss of all their DBs? How do they come back from the loss of their entire secondary? And his response was, it's not even in my top 3 of issues for Bama in this 2018 season coming up. So for the question of the day, I want to ask you guys, if Bama doesn't win it all, Bama's by a mile the favorite to win it all in 2018. If Bama does not win it all in 2018, what will the reason be in you guys' opinion? Now, I have my list of opinions that are coming up, so let's get rolling having said all that. Now, I want to show you guys Stewart Mandel's list of reasons, right? Now, I like I told you guys, he was asked in a mailbag, what could possibly be a reason that Bama doesn't make it all? Doesn't the list of DBs that are leaving concern you? This is what Stewart Mandel's answer was. Here's what his top 5 reasons were this year. Now, Saban bungling the Tua Tagovailoa Jalen Hurts situation. I don't know that Saban's bungled much of anything during his career at Alabama. Maybe once or twice. I don't think he's going to bungle that situation. There might be an unhappy quarterback one way or the other in the end. I don't think he's going to bungle the situation. Number 4, replacing the entire secondary. Now, a lot of people think this will be Bama's weakness going into the season. I'm going to touch on this here in a little bit in my list. I don't know if it's his number 4. I moved it up a little bit, I think. Number 3, Auburn. Now, I got to be honest with you guys. Auburn, that doesn't scare me as much as either one of those 2 situations up there. Auburn coming to Tuscaloosa is not going to be scary at all for me. 6 new assistant coaches in one offseason coming in there at number 2 for Stewart Mandel. Now, I think that's a little bit of a head scratcher. I agree with him for a lot of different reasons, but I got a little bit more specific on my list. And then number 1, Clemson. Now, I think there are a couple of different reasons Clemson could possibly beat Alabama. I think that definitely deserves to be on the list. I also got a little bit more specific in that one in terms of what really scares me about Clemson. It's not so much Bama losing the secondary. It's another position group, from Clemson that absolutely has me a little bit more worried than probably Stewart Mandel wants to talk about. So without further ado, what's the best thing to do is jump in on this question. Now, I do want to remind you guys the question today. Please let us know what you think Bama's weakness or the one reason Bama might not be able to repeat in 2018 the way they did in 2017 and years before. Robbie Harris weighing in saying could be leadership or gelling as a team. There would be no hiccups anywhere, says Jenna. Listen, Jenny, if he's going to be against Bama in any way, not watching, there will be no hiccups anywhere. I'm not against Bama. I played for Bama. I wore the crimson. I bled in the uniform. So if you want to just follow along with us, please do. Justin Marco says injuries will be the reason. Depth isn't as high as usual. There's not. We're not going to sit here and dive back into why Bama might stink. We're just saying if they don't get to repeat, what might be the reason in you guys' eyes. So without further ado, let's dive in, like I said, to my top 5. Number 5 for me, offensive line struggles against dominant defensive lines. Now, you guys say, well, our offensive line is going to be great. I agree. The offensive line is going to be incredible. But when you look at some of the defensive lines they could possibly match up with this year, you're talking about Mississippi State, who's got a couple of really top 10 defensive linemen in the SEC. LSU, Texas A&M's got a couple of 5 stars right in the middle of their defensive line. Auburn's front 7 at a whole could be incredible. If you do match up with Georgia there in the SEC championship game, they should have a good front. And that Clemson defensive front, that was number 1 on Stewart Mandel's list. That Clemson defensive front is something I think could be scary moving forward. So I have that kind of highlighted all in one. Offensive line struggles against dominant defensive lines. The offensive line did not look that great in spring practice. We're going to watch, and hopefully they bounce back there in fall practice in that training camp. Number 4. Michael Oxley and Dan Enos, that combination might not work out as offensive coordinators. Now, I like Michael Oxley. I like Dan Enos. This is a different situation, though, for Alabama. This is a situation where Michael Oxley, the wide receiver coach, Dan Enos, the quarterback coach, Michael Oxley calling plays, both of them kind of coming together to make this offensive game plan. A little bit different of a thing that Nick Saban hasn't really used much in his tenure at Alabama, so it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that possibly could play out. I don't expect there to be any hiccups with that, but if we do get into the season, you don't like the way the offense is rolling, you expected more out of Tua, you expected more out of the offensive line or Damian Harris, we are going to come back and visit that and look back at what that situation could possibly be. Number 3. Quarterback controversy does come to fruition. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about this. It's great to have 2 quarterbacks. I don't think it'll happen. I've got Bama obviously winning the national title game, but when you look back at what possibly could be some hiccups, I think it is intriguing to look at maybe one of these guys isn't happy. Maybe one of them does transfer in the end. Maybe it doesn't play out the way Bama fans hope it will. Now, I don't expect that to happen. I hope both these guys play. I think both these guys will play. I think both of them will get meaningful snaps. I think you'll see one of these guys probably take the reins towards the end of the year. But it is something to definitely keep our eyes on moving forward. How Nick Saban, Dan Enos, Michael Oxley, how that entire situation plays out from the quarterback room to the offensive coordinator to everything possibly moving forward. Number 2 on my list. Now, we spent a lot of time on the show talking about how Georgia's not quite there, right? We've talked about Kirby Smart having to replace everybody over at Georgia. I do still think, though, that they are going to run away with the SEC East. I don't see anybody in the SEC East really being close to what Georgia can do. If all of a sudden, through 12 games of the year, Alabama has to meet Georgia in Atlanta, I think there's a possibility for a hiccup there. I think Kirby Smart trying to get revenge. I think he'll sell the Georgia football team on that, and I think they'll come out guns blazing in a possible matchup in Atlanta if Bama does see them down the road. Number 1 on my list, and it does go back to that secondary, but also includes a little bit of upfront. Defensive depth concerns for the Alabama defensive football team. Now, obviously, Stewart Mandel was answering the questions about what the secondary can be. Now, listen, remember, you're missing Hootie Jones, you're missing Tony Brown. It's not just 4 starters. You're missing the nickel and the dime guys. This is everybody. This is Minka back there calling the shots. This is Anthony Averett. This is Levi Wallace, the one-time walk-on. But let's also include this front group, right? Who do you have as a backup linebacker? We still don't know if Keith Holcomb's even going to be playing football here in the fall. Yes, you do have Dylan Moses. Yes, you do have Mack Wilson. Not a ton of depth, though, right now in the front 7. You really have to bring some of these guys along here in the coming months if you really want to feel like this defense is a deep unit. Again, this is one of those things that Bama could possibly hiccup on. Nobody in this room, including me, expects any of these things to happen. I think that Bama, I don't want to say they run through their schedule and go undefeated and it's just easy, but this is just hypothetical situations, what we could look back on and what we feel like might be one of those reasons looking back in the fall that Bama could have a hiccup somewhere along the way. A lot of you guys weighing in. Marty M. Nichols saying Woodstock, Alabama here. Wade Black, Roll Tide. Shalika Kennedy Jackson says 2 quarterbacks is a threat to everyone. I agree. It's going to be interesting to see that kind of dynamic play out. Josh Schuster saying St. Nick will figure it out. Trust the process. I absolutely do. I was part of the process. I trust it more than any of you guys do. I was part of it, and it's going to be an interesting thing to follow along. Nick Ellenberg weighing in saying young DBs could be the problem. Bama Nick from Americus, Georgia. So I appreciate you guys watching in. Pat Shellnut saying Roll Tide. Tim Glover saying maybe South Carolina can give Georgia some fits in the East. I'm not a huge South Carolina believer. It's going to be interesting to see that one kind of come along. Jeremy Pettis kind of giving us the Ben Davis question mark at linebacker. Ben Davis just isn't a guy we've heard a ton about, so it's kind of hard to kind of fill in the blanks and say Ben Davis here, Ben Davis there. We don't know. We haven't seen Ben Davis, so it's going to be interesting to see that kind of dynamic roll along as well. Hopefully, there's no injuries. Hopefully, the depth can come along. We know that Bama's, Nick Saban's the best quarterback in college football. He can coach this defensive guys up. Crystal Peoples weighing in on the quarterback conversation. I want him to play them both. I do too. I don't think you have to choose between them. Danny Lee Williams saying choosing between Jalen and Tua is a problem. Nah, dude. No, it's not a problem right now. I'm just saying at some point in the future, if it is cause for concern, watch for that to pop up. Watch and see how it being plays out. Robbie Harris saying Saban being abducted by aliens is one of those things that could be interesting. Melissa Jane weighing in on Stewart Mandel's list saying Saban and bungling do not go together. That's just a dumb thing to say. All the new coaches worry me a bit for various reasons. Roll Tide from St. Louis, Missouri. Appreciate you weighing in. I'm with you on that. I don't think the new coaches, to me, don't end up being a big deal in the end. But nevertheless, you guys keep the comments coming in. Matthew Merle over on a YouTube comment section saying Bama beating itself, like 5 turnovers in one game against Ole Miss. That's kind of the theme here. You know, you never expect it to go one way, but sometimes things do happen. Sometimes a Johnny Football walks into a situation like that where it doesn't turn up. It ended up being like Bama thought it would in the end. So We're going to go on to topic number 2 here. And this one just burns me up, man. I got to tell you guys, I've been to the ESPYs, right? I've been part of the ESPN thing. I was on an Alabama football team in 2009 that was nominated as best team for an ESPY. We didn't win. We lost to the New Orleans Saints, but still went out there and had a good time. It has blown my mind to see these ESPYs kind of come out with their nominations, come out with some of the different categories that you think Bama's a slam dunk for, right? Bama should be a slam dunk for, and I got the categories that I thought they were really snubbed on. Best game they were snubbed on, best team they were snubbed on, best moment they were snubbed on, and best championship performance. Now I'll go back and list some of those guys. The one thing they were nominated for, Tua's touchdown pass, nominated for best play. Not really best moment, not really best performance, not really best game. There you see the kind of Twitter feed from Alabama Athletics. Now, Justin Thomas does get a nod for best male golfer, but then that's it. That's it. As far as Bama winning a national title in college football on ESPN, you're telling me that's the most we can get out of this. Now, let me list these teams for you, right? This is what really, really becomes mind-boggling. It's not just 3 teams that are listed under best team. It's not 4 teams, it's not 5 teams. It's literally almost every other championship-winning team from last year except Alabama. You got the Houston Astros, World Series winners, Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl winners, U.S. women's hockey, Notre Dame women's basketball, Villanova men's basketball, the Golden State Warriors, and the Washington Capitals are all nominated for ESPYs for best team. Bama football is not listed on that list. Absolutely mind-boggling to me. Now, best game, I would think the national title game would be a slam dunk. Evidently, I'm not even close. The Rose Bowl game with Georgia and Oklahoma gets listed. World Series Game 5, 10 innings, Astros over Dodgers. And then there's a couple of other listed there, too, that obviously Bama's not going to get the benefit of the doubt talking about ESPN. It still boggles my mind. Let's go on to best moment. Vikings defeat Saints in divisional playoff game. The Las Vegas Knights go to the Stanley Cup Finals. UMBC upsets Virginia 16 over a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Bama getting absolutely no love in terms of best moment. Now, I think you guys know, and I know we're all going to agree to it, that it's absolutely ridiculous, but ESPN once again kind of throwing haymakers out there, not knowing exactly what to put on some of these lists. Best championship performance, you get George Springer from the Astros, Nick Foles from the Eagles, Kevin Durant from the Warriors, Dante DiVincenzo from Villanova basketball throughout their tournament run. I'm not saying that Bama would have won any of these, but the fact they don't have any nominations to me is an absolute slap in the face to a program that really at times has probably carried ESPN throughout the last decade. A little bit of a nod to Tua or Jalen or something with the best moment, something happening for the national title game other than just best play is a little bit ridiculous to me. And Malachi Morgan weighing in, they probably knew all the haters would bring up the tired, how did the best team not even win their division crap? Katie Reynolds saying, how was Tua's pass not best moment? I literally elevated off my bed when that pass landed in the receiver's arms. Shalika Kennedy Jackson saying, I cannot wait for the season to start. Terrence Brandon, Mike, I hope you're not going to hit on the same SI Top 10 today. I did not want to talk about the SI Top 10. We are on moving past that. Jeremy Pettis saying, Bama 2019 class going to be elite. Mike Cole saying, Roll Tide from Orange Beach. Larry Key, Roll Tide. Trisha Carroll Smith, Roll Tide. Mike Nooney saying, a nasty pass rush will cure a lot of the secondary problems. Kind of going back to our topic number 1 in our question of the day. Now, I tend to agree with that. I think when you look at Raekwon Davis and Anthony Jennings, Christian Miller, Latrell Lewis, all those guys rushing off the edge, creating havoc, I think they're going to be very good. You do have to watch out for some of these good offensive lines around the SEC. Hopefully one of those people be able to weigh in on that. Matthew Merle saying, did Colin Cowherd and Skip Bayless make that list? They might have. It sounds like something that would have come out from some of those guys voting on it. Honestly, it's mind-blowing that ESPN could come up with a list of best moments. And Tua Tagovailoa's pass, a guy coming off the bench in the second half as a true freshman in a national title game, could not make that list. When you look at how big of a part of sports that was over the last year, for that not to be a bigger part of ESPN's landscape and what they really wanted it to be, unbelievable. I mean, just an unbelievable slap in the face of that program. I think it's an absolute spitting in the face of Tua Tagovailoa. I'm sure that, listen, College Game Day is going to come out of Tuscaloosa this year. They're going to hype everything up, but let's not forget what ESPN has done. Just an absolute slap in the face. Let me list those teams again. Best team, Houston Astros, Philadelphia Eagles, U.S. women's hockey, Notre Dame women's basketball, Villanova men's basketball, Golden State Warriors, and Washington Capitals. All those teams nominated for best team ESPYs. It's unbelievable right there. Christopher McLeod kind of weighing in with me saying the villain never gets any love. I guess that's what Bama's got to be for the coming up years. And I guess I'm okay with that. I guess, listen, a lot of us Bama fans have been okay for the last few years of Bama playing the villain. A lot of people rooting for Bama to fail on a national landscape. I guess ESPN no matter how many broadcasting, how much broadcasting money they get off Alabama, I guess they're going to root for Bama to fail too. Mike Nooney saying, clearly Danny Cannell made that list, chugging haterade hashtag. I love that hashtag from Mike Nooney right there. That's Jeremy Pettis said that's Cowturd's SB list. Absolutely. Katie Reynolds saying it's just more fuel for the season. I definitely think that, I don't know if this is something that Nick Saban's going to hang on the walls or Nick Saban's going to talk about ad nauseum to the team. He's not going to talk about the ESPYs. But I'm just telling you guys, that's a little bit of a slap in the face to me, especially being on this side of the camera as opposed to the other side of the camera. I think that's a little bit ridiculous in terms of ESPN really not making light of what an incredible really moment that was on that such a huge stage back in January. Obviously, all of us Bama fans remember it. I do want to go on to this next topic, and for all of you that follow recruiting, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. This past weekend, Alabama had what they annually have. It's called a Champions Cookout. Now, they had to change the dynamic this year. They had to change the recruiting window. Now that you can take official visits back in the spring, Bama had to move this up a little bit. They're going to do a second one later on in July once that window closes back up again. But an incredible weekend nonetheless. When I tell you about the people that are expected to be on campus, and then I'm going to follow this up by seeing some of the reactions from the coaches. Now, Bama didn't get any commitments. Remember, Bama is the number one class by a wide margin right now. LSU creeping back up into some of the rankings. Texas A&M at number 2. Mississippi State jumping in. I think it's 7 right now. The SEC West really ruling recruiting on a national landscape right now. I didn't even mention Auburn in that same breath and some of the other teams that are really doing well. Now, here's a list of people that were expected to be in Tuscaloosa. We don't know if these were confirmed. We don't know if they made it. A lot of these things get up in the air. Jalen McCullough, Jerrion Jones, Devontae Lee from Louisiana, Eric Gilbert, Noah Pola Gates, Kane Patterson, who's really close to being a commitment for Alabama as a high 4-star, Savell Smalls, Clay Webb, the 5-star center from Oxford, Alabama, Nathan Pickering, the Mississippi State commit. I don't know if he ended up going to this weekend or not. I think he committed to Mississippi State last Thursday or Wednesday. Nolan Smith, 5-star. Kayvon Thibodeau, 5-star out of California. Fa'atui Tuatele, 5-star out of Hawaii. Ishmael Sopsher, 5-star out of the state of Louisiana. Ed Orgeron really recruiting that guy really hard. 5 stars all around, right? So you think, boy, I hope that really went well for Alabama. I hope they did some good things this past weekend. Nobody gets to really see into what's happening. You can't listen to Nick Saban's conversation. What I do have, though, is a series of tweets from some of the Alabama assistant coaches that evidently felt really good about what was going on in Tuscaloosa this past weekend. First one I want to show you is Carl Scott that goes way out of his way to tweet this right here. Now, those words right there look like poetry in my eyes. Anybody that's following recruiting for Alabama understanding how big of a deal it is. This 2019 class will go down in history. Mark my words, hashtag rolling, hashtag roll tide there with the A. Now, that was followed up, I believe, by Brent Key's tweet is what we're going to show you guys next. Brent Key, the offensive line coach at Alabama, who has a strong Twitter presence and a strong Twitter following. Attention. This is not a test. Again, this is not a test. All others should take cover immediately. The tide is rolling, exclamation mark. Now, obviously, that becomes a big part, and a lot of you guys are going to love what they're saying. And Jeremy Pettis saying they had 8 5-stars at the cookout. Robbie Browning said, yo, Big Mike, P. Coale in the house. Absolutely. Let me show you guys Josh Gaddis' tweet to kind of finish up this topic right here, talking about this Champions Cookout. Josh Gaddis, obviously the wide receiver coach, just wait on it. You better believe it. Hashtag roll tide. Now let me go back through that list of 5-stars real quick again. Clay Webb is a Bama lean. Nolan Smith would love to have him. Kayvon Thibodeau, love to have him. Tuatele, Bama lean. Ismail Sopsher, a little bit up in the air right now in terms of what his recruiting is looking like. But I got to tell you guys, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty dang good coming off that, knowing how many talented guys were in town, and obviously Jeremy Pettis saying 8 5-stars at the cookout. I don't know if all those were from the 2019 class, but when you look at what that could possibly mean, and Benjamin Wolk, our guy, weighed in and saying, sheesh, Benjamin Wolk knows exactly what I'm talking about. Those guys getting on campus, getting the message across, really being able to understand what these assistant coaches are doing. Now, remember, we've covered it a ton on the show. This is a different dynamic for Alabama recruiting. When I talk about Brent Key, when I talk about Carl Scott, when I talk about Josh Gaddis, it's building the hype, right? You're not only putting the message out there to the recruits that were on campus, putting the message out there to other recruits that weren't. This is going to be a historic class. We had other guys, Pierce Quick, Paul Tyson, a bunch of other guys that were weighing in on Twitter saying, boy, this is going to be an incredible class. Talia Tagovailoa was in Tuscaloosa this past weekend throwing touchdown passes in Bama's 7-on-7 tournament there in Bryant-Denny Stadium. So it was a good weekend for Alabama recruiting. Terrence Brandon saying there were a few 2020 prospects that were in there. Absolutely. Sonia Lindsay saying rolling with the tide. And Clemson, South Carolina. Wow, you're in enemy territory over there. Appreciate you weighing in and watching the show. Donald Brittany Schultz saying roll tide, Mike. Dwayne Hamby saying, don't hate, appreciate. Malachi Morgan weighing back on the ESPYs. I almost guarantee that if the tables were turned and a true freshman brought Georgia back to beat the big bad Bama in the second half, they would have given the Dogs every award out there. Now, I tend to agree with that. I think it's absolutely ridiculous when you look at it. And honestly, this is a rolling thing for ESPN, is it not? I mean, they give Bama some love, and they show up time and time again. It's the greatest dynasty right now in college football history. I mean, it's not even, there's not even a close second place in terms of what Alabama's doing right now. So it is interesting to see ESPN kind of shy away from kind of greatness, is what I'm kind of calling it right now. Jeremy Pettis saying the 2019 and 2020 class were there. Absolutely. I think the guys I named for the most part were just the 2019 5-stars. I got to be honest with you guys. So the list that I'm kind of listing right now, some of the people we're putting out there, Clay Webb, me being an offensive lineman, Clay Webb's one of these guys I've kind of fallen in love with his recruiting, fallen in love with what he's doing. I think it's going to come down to Auburn, Alabama, LSU, possibly Georgia getting in that window right there. But this is a guy who's an Alabama lean. This is a guy who's good friends with Alabama commit Pierce Quick. This is a guy from the state of Alabama. I think getting this guy on campus really sparks off the next wave of great Alabama football players there at the center position. This is a guy who is a must-get for Nick Saban and company. Obviously, they're on the right track with that. When you look at Carl Scott's tweet, Brent Key, Josh Gaddis, it must have been a pretty dang good weekend in terms of what they were able to get done at that Champions Cookout. So we're going to follow along with that. Jerome Webb saying a game-changing class they could add to the legacy. I think that's what they're trying to get. Collin Visit saying most of these verbal commits will likely take advantage of the early signing period. Immediate impact class. I agree with that. And I think once we get all these guys on campus, I think December 20th is that early signing period date to really mark down on you guys' calendars. Now, this next one for me, and obviously you guys know we've done a ton of countdowns. We've talked a ton about Tua Tagovailoa. Where does he fit in the picture, right? CBS Sports had him early in the offseason at number 2. SI.com listed him as number 84 player in the country last week. There's a little bit of up and down. I got to be honest with you guys. This next list we're going to show you, and I think it's from Henry McKenna from USA Today. This one's probably the most in the ballpark of the list I've seen. Now, is Tua Tagovailoa number 1? Absolutely not. He's only played really a couple of meaningful halves of football, not even really a full game as a quarterback at Alabama, so of course he's not going to be number 1. Let me show you guys the list, though, and I have the quote here about Tua Tagovailoa and what he means. Tua Tagovailoa comes in at number 3 there on USA Today's list. Now, this is what Henry McKenna had to say about Tua Tagovailoa. Saban surely had a sense that Tagovailoa could handle the huge moment and threw him in the mix on the biggest stage, where he went 14 of 24 for 166 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception in the overtime win. Expect more of the same from Tagovailoa next season in terms of what he's going to be able to do for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that we all expect that Tua, Jalen Hurts, or whatever combination it is at quarterback are actually going to be game changers moving forward for Alabama, the quarterback position. I do think it's interesting, though, to stick Tua at number 3. Now, let me read off the list here. I don't think we have a graphic. I'm going to read it off for you, and you tell me if you agree with where Tua Tagovailoa is fitting on this list. Number 10, Jordan Ta'amu from Ole Miss. Number 9, Shea Patterson from Michigan. I'm not sure what Shea Patterson's really done that puts him at number 9, but nevertheless. Number 8, Jake Browning from Washington. Number 7, Will Grier from West Virginia. Remember, Will Grier was number 1 on CBS Sports countdown of quarterbacks. He was the best quarterback in the country, one of the Heisman favorites, really, when you look around the country. Henry McKenna has him at number 7. Number 6, Georgia's Jake Fromm, who, if you guys remember, finished about 20 spots ahead of Tua Tagovailoa on the SI.com countdown last week. Number 5, Justin Herbert. Number 4, Drew Lock. Number 3, Tua Tagovailoa. Now, keep in mind, Tua Tagovailoa is the top-rated SEC quarterback in this countdown. Number 2, Trace McSorley from Penn State. Number 1, Mackenzie Milton from our friends down there at UCF, being able to get a lot of wins this past year and obviously throwing himself in the conversation to do a lot of good things. Now, I think Mackenzie Milton's a great quarterback. I think you could put a number of guys in that number 1 list. Trace McSorley, underrated probably at Penn State. He's going to be asked to carry that football team this year. I like Tua Tagovailoa sitting there at 3. I don't think you're overhyping. I don't think you're underselling him. I think putting there at 3 allows the kind of roof to be taken off this countdown later in the year. Now, Drew Lock is a guy who some people think could go number 1 overall at next year's NFL draft. He sits right behind Tua, obviously, at number 4. Justin Herbert from Oregon getting a lot of love as a quarterback. And like I said, Jake Fromm sitting there at number 6 on the list. Tim Glover saying could be a Heisman Trophy winner in a few years. Obviously talking about Tua Tagovailoa. I don't even know if in a few years is the right word. Let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa for the 2018 season. The hype is there. The preseason hype is there. The summer hype is there. It's everybody just wondering if he's going to play out and be exactly what Nick Saban and company possibly think he could be at the quarterback position. Now, remember, he still has to win the starting quarterback job, but I'm not even going to say in a few years that we're going to be talking about Heisman Trophy. I think that could come easily as soon as this year, if not next year, maybe a couple of years, not less a few years. Malachi Morgan saying, I'm surprised Coale Tate wasn't on the list. I am too. Now, Coale Tate's going to get a ton of pub in terms of quarterbacks. Obviously, the quarterback over there at Arizona, and deservedly so. But Coale Tate, obviously, didn't play quite the full season last year. It's going to be an interesting kind of storyline to follow along. Christopher McLeod saying Jalen is a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. I don't know if you could have squeezed two Bama quarterbacks in the top 10 there without somebody absolutely losing it. I think you probably were right to put Tua Tagovailoa. If I had to list Jalen Hurts, he's definitely in my top 20. I don't know if he's in my top 10 just yet. I need to see a little bit more out of Jalen Hurts, but I do think we are going to see him play and see him play in a crimson uniform a lot this coming year. So hopefully that gets needed out. Maybe by the end of the year, we are talking about Jalen Hurts being a possible top 10 quarterback in front of some of those. I mean, I am scratching my head about Shea Patterson. Will Greer, I'm surprised, is not higher. Jake Fromm's right where he should have been. Drew Lock, to me, is completely overrated in terms of what he brings to the table at Missouri. Mackenzie Milton, until I haven't watched a lot of UCF, so I have to kind of take Henry McKinnon at his word here as far as the USA Today's go. Yeah, he did shred Auburn, as somebody reminds me in my ear. He definitely had a good game today. I think he rushed for about 120 yards on that Auburn defense, too. So, all right, without further ado, and obviously, we love to show you guys a video here at the end of the show, but this is an extra special video. This is something we want to show you guys. First of all, I want to highlight our guy Collin Sexton, not only because he got drafted 8th overall to the Cavaliers. You guys know we mostly focus on football on the show, but I got to highlight what this guy was wearing this past weekend for this NBA draft. Here's the tweet from Alabama men's basketball, the outfit that Collin Sexton was going to wear. Now, this deserves to be highlighted and blown up a little bit more. I don't even know if Alabama men's basketball, putting it all in one tweet, can really show you just how good it is. Let's show you this video right here of Collin Sexton's outfit and just how fly this thing is possibly going to be when you talk about what he wore to the NBA draft. Got the next one coming up there. You got the, kind of embroidered name Collin Sexton right there inside the left-hand side of that jacket so he can kind of plug it in. That's kind of sleek looking right there. And then you got Collin Sexton, the picture on the back half of the jacket. Are you kidding me right now? I would pay so much money to have a jacket made for myself like this. And then these shoes, I think this is the cool thing. I don't own any size 15s like this, but I think this is a cool thing, what you're supposed to be wearing at a place like the NBA draft if you want to look really cool and do all the things. Alabama men's basketball, though, and the Alabama athletic department put out a cool video about Collin Sexton, and we wanted to make sure we showed you that, guys, here just to get you a little bit through your Monday throughout the rest of your day, make you feel a little bit better about it. And like I said, 8th overall pick over to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Expect a lot of good things. He makes a plea at the end of the draft to what he thinks him and LeBron James could possibly do. But here's the video put out by the men's basketball team of Collin Sexton over the last couple of years.
I want Collin Sexton with his hands on the ball. Do or die for Bama. Must win to make the NCAA tournament. Sexton! It is showtime in Tuscaloosa. He has been lights out here in St. Louis. Behind the back, wrap around, and climbing the ladder is Dante Hall. Oh my, Collin Sexton, give us more. Out in front. Sexton, the young bull in Tuscaloosa. I mean, that is flat out silly from Sexton. Sexton the buzzer. Got it! Collin Sexton, a superstar already.
Here's Sexton in traffic. Collin weaving behind the back with a dribble. The look to Petty. Left side. Spot up three. You know what happened. Tide coming into Gainesville, Florida, and running Florida out of Exactech Arena. What a shot from Collin Sexton.
With Alabama faithful.
Sexton still hustling. He could beat a single team, just one guy on himself. He's that good.
Collin, the moment's yours. Thanks for being here, by the way.
Yeah, thank y'all.
The floor is yours, and where are you headed to school?
Next year, I'll be going to Alabama.
Man, what an incredible job there by the University of Alabama athletics, graphics department, being able to put out a video like that. I got chills watching that. I mean, Collin Sexton, really one of those athletes that turns the tide, no pun intended, for what your basketball program could possibly be. Having, him on a stage like he has been for the last couple of months and really the entire year really sends Avery Johnson and their chances at being an elite basketball program to the next level. Malachi Morgan kind of weighing in and saying, man, what a cool video. Jeremy Pettis kind of giving Bama B-ball the Flames. Absolutely incredible year for them. And obviously you hope for greater things in the future about, with Avery Johnson at the helm. But for a start to what Collin Sexton brought for 1 year, obviously we're all very thankful for what he's able to do. Jerome Webb weighing in and saying, awesome video, RTR with the exclamation mark. Some of you guys still talking about the Jalen Tua, Gay Gibson weighing in and saying Tua showed up when the pressure was on. He showed what was needed to make an amazing quarterback. I agree with that. He will rank higher the more time he gets on the field. I agree with that too. Donald Brittany Schultz saying Jalen's a great athlete, but not a top 10 quarterback. Dwayne Hamby saying, don't forget about RBs, wide receivers, and awesome defense. D wins games too. Absolutely agree with that. We're going to talk about the depth concerns moving forward this year for the football team. Thanks for everybody that's weighed in today. Thanks for the great conversation there in the comment section. You guys have been great. Some of our everyday commenters, Lindsey Pritchard, Christopher McLeod, William Lee over in the YouTube comment section, down to Brittany Schultz, Malachi Morgan, Jeremy Pettis, Tim Glover. Obviously, you guys have been great in the comment section today. We will be back tomorrow, obviously, Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, noon Central, to bring you guys the latest and greatest. If you guys do watch SEC Country Live, and I know a bunch of you guys do watch SEC Country Live this afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 Central, myself, Brandon Adams from Dog Nation Daily, we're going to chop it up, talking about all the latest and greatest in SEC football. Really a huge weekend as far as recruiting goes in the SEC, so we'll cover all of that. Until tomorrow, though, guys, I'll see you right here on the SEC Country Alabama Facebook page and YouTube page. You guys have a great Monday, and I'll see you back here tomorrow and Roll Tide.
You've been watching Roll Tide Daily, the new daily program for Crimson Tide fans, presented by SEC Country.